The courtroom buzzed with quiet anticipation. Cameras were set. Microphones in place. This wasn't just any hearing, it was a live-streamed oversight review regarding judicial misconduct claims tied to a complex network of white-collar cases. Judge Chen, sharply dressed in his traditional black robes, leaned back in his chair with a smirk tugging at his lips. Across from him stood former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, calm, confident, and surprisingly silent for the first few moments. "You know, Ms. Bondi," Judge Chen began, voice echoing through the chamber, "some people come in here thinking they're still in the spotlight. But this is a courtroom, not a campaign stage." Polite laughter rippled through the gallery. Cameras zoomed in on Bondi's face. She didn't flinch. He continued, tapping his pen with a theatrical flair, "Let's not confuse charisma with credentials." Bondi slowly opened her briefcase. No words yet, just precise motion. She removed a single manila envelope, sealed in red tape. The room hushed. Judge Chen arched an eyebrow. "What's that?" "A script," he chuckled. Bondi finally spoke. Calm. Clear. Unshaken. "Actually, Your Honor, this is a sealed federal indictment. Signed. Stamped. And admissible." The smirk vanished. Judge Chen's hand froze mid-air, his gavel an inch above the desk. "A sealed what?" he asked, the smugness in his tone slipping into something sharper. Pam Bondi stepped forward, heels clicking with precision. She placed the envelope squarely on the desk in front of him. "A sealed federal indictment, Your Honor. Authorized by a federal grand jury. You are listed as the primary subject." Gasps echoed from the gallery. Even the court clerk hesitated mid-typing. Judge Chen's face tightened. "Ms. Bondi, if this is some kind of stunt," "It's not," she interrupted, her voice still calm. "I was authorized by the Office of the Special Inspector General to present this in open court. On record. On camera. Today." A murmur swept the courtroom. Bondi turned slightly to face the press gallery, letting the seal glint under the lights. "You mocked me," she said quietly, "but I came here to clean up what you thought no one was watching." Judge Chen blinked rapidly, his eyes scanning the envelope. "We'll recess immediately." Bondi shook her head. "No. You won't. Because according to this order," she pulled out a second document, unfolded it, and handed it to the bailiff, "you're being formally served. On camera. Per Section 721 of the Judiciary Review Act." Judge Chen didn't speak. He couldn't. The bailiff took the order with trembling hands and walked it straight to Judge Chen. Cameras from multiple news outlets zoomed in, capturing every second. The judge's fingers twitched as he unfolded the document. The color drained from his face. "What is this?" he muttered, eyes scanning the page. This isn't possible." Pam Bondi didn't move. "It's already been unsealed for the Department of Justice's internal oversight. You were just the last to know." The courtroom sat in absolute silence. Even the hum of the camera crews dulled, as if everyone collectively held their breath. Bondi continued, her voice steady but laced with quiet force. "The investigation includes obstruction, evidence tampering, and improper influence over multiple financial rulings. That influence extended to cases where you stood to gain, directly." Judge Chen looked up, face pale but tight with anger. "You think this is justice? It's a hit job." Bondi stepped forward again. "No, Judge. What you've done is a betrayal of the robe you wear. And it's not just my word anymore, it's evidence. Depositions. Financial trails. Sworn statements. From your own clerks." From the back, someone whispered, "Oh my God." A marshal entered the room quietly and stood just behind the bench. Chen saw him, and for the first time, his confidence cracked fully. Judge Chen stared at the U.S. Marshal now standing a few feet away. The room seemed smaller, hotter, the walls pressing in. His voice dropped an octave, quieter, more desperate. "You're telling me they're actually moving forward with this?" he asked, eyes flicking between Bondi and the marshal. Pam Bondi didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed a small stack of documents beside the indictment. "I'm not telling you, they are. And the evidence speaks louder than anything I could say." Judge Chen leaned back in his chair, visibly shaken. "This is outrageous. I've given 30 years to this system." Bondi's tone sharpened. "And in the last 5, you violated it more times than most defendants I've ever prosecuted. You forgot the one rule that matters: accountability finds everyone. Even you." Reporters furiously typed and whispered into earpieces. The live stream's comment feed was exploding. Chen looked to the clerk, then to his legal advisor at his right. "We need to stop this feed, now." Pam raised a hand calmly. "Under the Public Integrity Clause of the new Reform Statute, this is protected coverage. You can't stop it. Not anymore." The marshal stepped forward. "Your Honor, I have orders to escort you to your chambers, pending administrative processing. Please cooperate." Judge Chen opened his mouth to argue, then froze. The gallery stood in silent anticipation. No gavel. No witty remark. Just a quiet man in robes, finally cornered. The silence in the courtroom felt heavier than any verdict. Judge Chen stood slowly, his movements no longer commanding but mechanical, like someone realizing the weight of every choice he'd made. He glanced at the cameras, then at Pam Bondi. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply watched with the poise of someone who knew this moment wasn't about vengeance, but justice. The marshal motioned gently. "This way, sir." As Judge Chen stepped down from the bench, a low murmur rolled through the crowd. Some whispered disbelief. Others watched with eyes wide in shock. This was the man who once silenced attorneys mid-sentence with a look. Now he walked with slumped shoulders, the robe swaying behind him like a shadow of former power. As he passed Bondi, he paused, not to speak, but to look her in the eye. A single, unspoken moment passed. Whatever he saw there made him look away. The marshal led him toward the side door. Before exiting, Judge Chen turned back to face the gallery. But the silence that had once obeyed him now judged him. Pam stepped toward the podium and addressed the room. "Let this be clear, no title makes anyone untouchable. The law is not a weapon for the powerful. It is a shield for the people." Flashes from cameras exploded across the room. And Judge Chen disappeared through the door. The courtroom remained still for a beat too long, no one quite ready to speak, to move, to breathe normally. A sitting judge had just been served and escorted out during a live hearing. Pam Bondi gathered her papers methodically, unbothered by the commotion swelling around her. Reporters were already shouting questions, but she raised one hand calmly. "I'll take questions outside," she said, then turned to the panel seated at the side of the courtroom. "But this chamber deserves quiet now. The process must finish without spectacle." The presiding administrative officer, an ethics chair from the state's Judicial Review Board, finally broke his silence. "Ms. Bondi," he said, voice stiff, "what just happened here was unprecedented." She looked at him without blinking. Unprecedented corruption demands unprecedented transparency. The officer nodded slowly, unable to disagree. Outside, the hallway was packed with cameras and correspondents from every major network. The words, Judge Chen, and indictment were already trending. Bondi stepped to the microphones. Today wasn't about spectacle. It was about restoration, she began. The bench must remain sacred. When someone in power betrays it, the people deserve to see accountability unfold in full view. A reporter shouted, "Was this personal?" Pam shook her head. This was professional. And necessary. From behind her, the courtroom doors closed with a heavy, echoing thud, like the end of an era. Within the hour, networks replayed the footage on loop, Judge Chen's stunned expression, the handoff of the sealed indictment, the quiet march out of the courtroom. News anchors were calling it the most dramatic moment in modern judicial history. But not everyone was cheering. Inside the city's legal elite, panic rippled. Statements from defense firms, lobbyists, and political allies began pouring in, some condemning the move, others distancing themselves from Chen entirely. The Judicial Ethics Committee received over 300 calls before sunset. Meanwhile, Bondi sat in a quiet office downtown, flipping through the next batch of files. Her aide stepped in, holding a phone. "You've got Senator Moore on line too, says it's urgent." Pam didn't look up. "Let him wait." The aide hesitated. "He says this move's making a lot of people nervous." Pam finally looked up, eyes sharp. "Good." She stood and walked to the window, overlooking the city. They should be nervous. For too long, they thought robes and titles meant immunity. Now they know someone's watching. And I'm not stopping with Chen. Outside, a protest had already formed, half praising her, half accusing her of undermining the system. But Bondi wasn't rattled. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "One down." While the public wrestled with shock and headlines spun in every direction, a different kind of meeting was taking place, far from cameras. In a private chamber within a downtown legal firm known for representing high-profile judges, a group of senior advisors sat at a long mahogany table. "He's going to turn on everyone," one of them said grimly, tossing a manila folder onto the table. "Chen never falls alone." Another, older and more composed, leaned back in his chair. "We underestimated Bondi. We thought she was a relic of the past. But she's playing a different game now." Someone else asked, "What if she has more indictments?" A deep silence followed. Then came the question no one wanted to answer: what if she has our names? Meanwhile, in a secured federal facility, Judge Chen sat alone, no robe, no courtroom, just a sterile interview room and a camera trained on him. A DOJ official entered quietly, carrying a thin laptop. "You've been offered a cooperation deal," he said flatly. Chen looked up, his face tired. "How many others are they going after?" The agent clicked a button. On screen appeared a digital list. Names. Dozens of them. Some he knew. Some he didn't. Chen stared for a moment before whispering, "She's not just cleaning house, she's leveling the whole system." By the next morning, 3 resignations had already hit the headlines, 2 circuit court judges and 1 high-ranking state prosecutor. All had quietly stepped down, citing personal matters. But insiders knew better. Pam Bondi's files weren't just deep, they were interconnected. One sealed indictment had become a warning shot. The rest? Imminent. In D.C., a closed-door emergency meeting took place at the Judiciary Oversight Committee. One senator whispered, "If Bondi keeps going, this could be the biggest institutional purge we've seen in half a century." Meanwhile, back in Florida, Pam met with 2 federal agents in a dimly lit briefing room. She handed them a new folder marked Confidential, Case 07B. "This one connects to 5 judges, 3 shell companies, and a retirement trust based in the Cayman Islands," she said. One agent glanced up, wide-eyed. "You're saying Judge Morales is compromised too?" Pam nodded. "Morales. And the ones protecting him." Chen was just the top of the web, but the rot goes deeper. The second agent leaned forward. "How did you get all this?" Pam's response was quiet, almost cold, "They taught me how the system works. Then they forgot I was still watching." Word spread fast. Some within the system were scrambling for legal counsel. Others were boarding planes out of state. And one handwritten note landed anonymously on Bondi's desk. Just 4 words, "You don't scare us." She stared at it a moment. Then picked up her pen. And wrote back, "You should." Despite growing fear in the judiciary, some still believed they could outmaneuver Pam Bondi. In a dim lounge reserved for high-level legal brass, Judge Morales sat surrounded by old allies, state attorneys, political donors, a former lobbyist turned advisor. "She can't take us all down," Morales said, his tone clipped with false confidence. "Chen made mistakes. I haven't. We keep quiet, we stay untouchable." A former state prosecutor leaned in. "You really think Bondi didn't plan for pushback?" Morales scoffed. "She doesn't have the spine to keep going." But at that very hour, Pam was briefing a joint task force in a federal building miles away. She moved through case files like a tactician, every connection mapped and color-coded. "There's a pattern of suppression here," she said, tapping the screen. "False dismissals, laundered campaign money, and a clear trail from Judge Morales to 2 criminal referrals buried by his staff." One agent rubbed his temples. "And no one caught this before." "They did," Pam answered flatly. "They just chose silence." Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted source: "Morales meeting in person tonight. Southside Club. He's nervous." Pam didn't hesitate. "We're going in." Hours later, under the quiet din of jazz music and low lighting, Morales lifted a glass to his lips, just as the club door opened and 3 agents in plain clothes entered. He didn't see Pam at first. But when he did, the glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. Time slowed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Morales stood frozen, his broken glass dripping onto his polished shoes. Pam Bondi stepped forward from the shadows of the lounge, flanked by 2 federal agents. Her expression was unreadable, but her presence said everything. "Judge Morales," she said calmly, "you're not here by accident tonight. And neither am I." He swallowed hard. "Pam. Let's not do this here." She raised a document. "This subpoena says otherwise. You're being called for immediate deposition under federal warrant." He glanced around, looking for an ally, a door, a way out. But no one moved. Even his once loyal companions shifted away, unwilling to be caught in the fallout. "You don't want this fight," Morales said, trying to find steadiness. "You're tearing the judiciary apart." Pam stepped closer. "No, I'm holding it together. You tore it apart years ago, when you decided justice was for sale." The agents moved in, but Pam raised a hand. "No cuffs. Not yet." He walks out the front door, with the world watching. A photographer from a local outlet, tipped off by a silent source, snapped the moment. Within minutes, the image was online. Pam Bondi confronts Morales in public. Second judge faces federal action. Morales turned to her one last time. "You don't know who you're messing with." She stared back. "I do. That's why I'm not backing down." The photo of Pam Bondi confronting Judge Morales went viral before dawn. Headlines flooded the news cycle. By noon, Morales had resigned. By evening, he was in federal custody, his passport revoked. But Pam didn't stop to celebrate. She returned to the briefing room, already preparing the next case. The walls around her were now lined with whiteboards, charts, and names connected by pins and string, like a prosecutor's war room. The press begged for interviews. Politicians whispered threats in back channels. Even former allies called her too aggressive. Still, she moved forward. Then came a phone call. A calm voice on the line. "Ms. Bondi, this is Director Keller. The President wants to speak with you." That afternoon, in a private conference room in Washington, Pam sat across from the Commander-in-Chief. "You've shaken the system," he said, "and you've done what most people in this town wouldn't dare. But I need to ask, what's your endgame?" Pam looked him dead in the eye. "The system doesn't need protection. It needs truth. And if that truth makes people uncomfortable, then they were never fit to lead." He leaned back, silent for a long moment. Then, We'd like you to take over the Federal Integrity Division. Full authority. No filters. No chains. Pam didn't flinch. She reached into her folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across the table. Then we start with this name, she said. Because the rot isn't done yet. The president looked down. His eyes narrowed as he read. Pam Bondi had not just exposed corruption. She had redrawn the map of justice in America, live, on camera, and without apology.